You are 3 months old. You cannot walk. You cannot talk. You cannot feed yourself or protect yourself from anything. You are almost never alone. Someone is holding you right now, not your mother, maybe your aunt, maybe a teenage cousin, maybe a woman who is not related to you by blood at all but who has held a dozen babies before you and will hold a dozen more after. You are passed from arm to arm like something precious being kept warm. This is not unusual. This is simply how it has always been. For most of human history, no child was raised by one or two people alone. The idea that a single set of parents bears full responsibility for raising a child is, in evolutionary terms, astonishingly new. And once you understand how your ancestors actually raised their children, the pressure so many modern parents feel starts to look less like a personal failure and more like a structural one. Let's start with the science behind why human babies are the way they are. Human infants are born remarkably helpless compared to other primates. A newborn chimpanzee can cling to its mother's fur within hours. A newborn human cannot support its own head for months. Anthropologists call this altriciality, the state of being born underdeveloped, dependent. Why would evolution produce something so vulnerable? The answer lies in your skull and your hips. The human brain is so large that if babies stayed in the womb until their brains matched the developmental stage of other primates at birth, they would never fit through the birth canal. So evolution found a workaround. Human babies are born with brains only about 25% of their adult size, and the remaining growth happens outside the womb over years. This means human infants require an extraordinary amount of external care during a period when they can do almost nothing for themselves. And that care could not come from one person alone. This is where the concept of alloparenting becomes essential. Caregiving provided by individuals other than the biological parents. Grandmothers, older siblings, and community members who all take on direct responsibility for a child's survival and development. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer HRDY, whose research on human child rearing has reshaped how scientists understand the evolution of cooperation, has argued that humans are unique among great apes in the sheer scale of alloparental care. Chimpanzee and gorilla mothers raise their infants largely alone. Human mothers, almost all of evolutionary history, did not. HRDY's research suggests that this shared caregiving was not a cultural nicety, it was a survival requirement. A nursing mother in a hunter-gatherer society needed, roughly the caloric equivalent of an extra meal per day just to produce milk, on top of needing to forage, processed food, and often care for older children simultaneously. There is no way one person manages all of this without help. The data backs this directly. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes, who has spent decades studying the Hadza people of Tanzania, found that grandmothers play an outsized role in food provisioning for grandchildren. A finding so significant it helps produce what is now called the grandmother hypothesis. The theory that menopause itself evolved because older women who stopped reproducing but kept contributing calories and care to grandchildren gave their entire family line a survival advantage. So let's reconstruct a day. You are an infant in a foraging band roughly 50,000 years ago. You wake up against the warm body of whoever slept beside you last night, which might not be the same person as the night before. Throughout the day, you are carried almost constantly in a sling made of hide or woven fiber against the chest or back of whoever is currently free to carry you. Anthropologist Melvin Connor, who has studied infancy among the Kungsan extensively, documented that hunter-gatherer infants are held or carried for the vast majority of their waking hours, far more than infants in industrialized societies. And they nurse on demand, sometimes more than 4 times an hour in brief bursts, rather than on any kind of schedule. You cry and someone responds almost immediately, because in a small interdependent group, a crying infant is everyone's concern, not just one parent's. This constant proximity and responsiveness is not indulgence. It served a direct survival function. Predators, exposure, and accidents were real threats, and an unattended infant was a vulnerable one. As you grow older, the structure of your care shifts, but the collective nature does not disappear. By around age 3 or 4 in many hunter-gatherer societies, you spend much of your day in mixed-age groups of children, supervised loosely by older siblings or cousins, rather than by adults directly. Anthropologist Barry Hewlett, who has extensively studied childhood among Central African foraging people like the AKA, documented that children in these societies have remarkable freedom to roam, explore, and play with real tools, including knives, at ages that would alarm many modern parents. But this freedom existed inside a tightly woven social safety net. Someone, somewhere was always watching, even if it wasn't your mother. Here is the counterintuitive twist: modern parenting, particularly in Western industrialized nations, is in many ways a historical anomaly built on isolation rather than abundance. The nuclear family, two parents raising children largely alone in a private household, became dominant only over the last few centuries, accelerating sharply with industrialization, urban migration, and the physical separation of extended families. Anthropologist David Lancy, who has written extensively on cross-cultural patterns in child rearing, has argued that the intensive, one-on-one, constantly supervised parenting style common in wealthy modern societies is, from a global and historical perspective, the outlier, not the norm. Most human societies across most of history distributed the labor of raising children across many. This matters because the psychological weight of modern parenting is a structural problem rather than an individual one. When a single parent or couple is expected to provide all the emotional labor, physical labor, supervision, and education that an entire band of related and unrelated adults once provided collectively, the math simply does not work. The exhaustion many parents feel today is not a sign that they are doing something wrong. It is a sign that they are trying to do alone what was never designed to be done alone. There was also no expectation of constant entertainment. In hunter-gatherer societies, children's play was largely self-directed and embedded in real adult activities. Children did not have toys built for them in any abundance. They had small versions of real tools, and they learned by watching and imitating the adults around them, gradually taking on real responsibilities as their confidence grew. Anthropologist Barry Hewlett's work documents AKA children beginning to participate in food processing and simple tool use by age 3, not as labor exploitation, but as a natural, low-pressure integration into the life of the group. Learning was not separated from living. Discipline looked different too. Physical punishment was documented but was rare in many foraging societies relative to agricultural and industrial ones. HRDY's comparative research suggests that because children were rarely alone with a single frustrated caregiver, and because multiple adults shared responsibility for behavior and correction, the kind of isolated, high-stakes parental confrontations common in nuclear family settings were less frequent. Conflict was diffused across a wider social network, rather than concentrated in one relationship. None of this means ancestral childhood was idyllic. Infant and child mortality rates were brutally high by modern standards. Disease, accidents, and predation took a devastating toll, and the emotional cost of that loss for ancestral families was real and profound. The communal structure did not eliminate grief. It simply meant that grief, like life, was shared rather than carried alone. What this reframing offers you is not a blueprint to copy exactly, since the ecological and social conditions of your life are nothing like those of a hunter-gatherer band 50,000 years ago. But it does offer something important: a corrected baseline. If you are a parent today feeling stretched too thin, isolated, and exhausted, you are not failing at a task humans are naturally equipped to do alone. You are succeeding against significant odds at a task that was never meant to be done alone in the first place. Your ancestors did not parent in isolation because they were sentimental about community. They parented in groups because it was the only way a creature this slow developing and this vulnerable could possibly survive. You are 3 months old. Someone is holding you right now. It was never supposed to be just one person. And in the parts of your life where you have built that wider circle back, in friends who show up, in family who help, and in communities that share the load, you have, without realizing it, recreated the very thing your body was designed to need all along.